The Labour Party is becoming a security risk, just as China steps up its preparations for war over Taiwan. And we saw this when the Albanese government this week threw Israel under the bus. That's our most important military ally in the Middle East. The government this week falsely claimed Israeli settlements in the West Bank, they were illegal. It claimed that East Jerusalem was Palestinian territory. And what is the connection here with China? Well, as I said yesterday, the government betrayed Israel because Labour's left-wing faction now controls the party, and it's got its national conference next week. And there was a danger that this conference would vote against the AUKUS deal with the United States and Britain for nuclear subs. Labour branches are complaining, oh, we're getting far too close to the US. So the government has said, well, we'll betray Israel if you let us have this subs deal. It's a swap. It's as terrible as that. And now we see why the government is so desperate not to have its national conference to debate our security ties with the US. Because there's news today, the US will in fact set up a military command centre in Northern Australia, clearly so it can be closer to the battlefield if there is a war with China. Joining me is General Jack Keane, a retired four-star general who served as Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army and now serves as Chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Jack Keane, always great to talk to you. Why the need for this US military command centre in Northern Australia?
Yeah, well, this is part of the coalition that is building to deal with China and its aggression in the region. And the fact that President Xi is threatening the use of force to take Taiwan and impose his will in the region. And if he was able to take Taiwan, just so our audience understands, that means China controls the Pacific region and reduces the influence of power of the United States and like-minded democracies. So what we're attempting to do here, and I think we've learned from history, Andrew, if you want to prevent a war, you got to be prepared to fight one. And that is what the command center is about and what the nuclear program associated with the United Kingdom and the United States and Australia is about, as well as the exercise program that the United States and our allies are conducting with Japan and the Philippines and Australia in the region, the upgunning of Japan's defense budget, the so-called Quad coalition that Australia is a part of with the United States, Japan, and India. All of this is forming as a result of China's intimidation and aggression. It's China that is threatening to use military force. We are taking a defensive role. And, you know, the other point is when you look at what we did with the Cold War in the Soviet Union, we figured that out. What we showed the Soviet Union was if they dared to attack us while they outnumbered us in platforms and in people, such costs would be imposed on them that it wouldn't be worth the result. And that is what we want President Xi and his military to see. We're trying to prevent a war from taking place.
But, General, the isolationist and pro-China lobby here will say, well, you know, and the anti-American lobby within Labour, if we have this base, this command centre, and a war does break out between US and China, that of itself ties us inevitably into that war, robs us of agency, of independence. Well, two parts to that, isn't there? One, is that true? And two, is that bad?
Yeah, well, the second, I think what you got to ask yourself the question, if China goes to war over Taiwan and they're able to defeat the United States and powers in the region, or because not enough countries have decided to respond to that, do we really want to live under the influence and power and control of China? Is that what we want for our people? I mean, we got to face the harsh reality of what we're dealing with. We had people in the 1930s when they saw Germany's rise and threatening to dominate and control Europe. We had many European leaders look at that because of they were tired as a result of World War I. They said, no, we don't need to do anything about this. They're not really going to do that. And look what we got, a major calamity as a result of World War II, the most significant calamity in the history of man dealing with conflict. We do not want this to happen. And the best way to prevent it is to deter it from happening and show strength and resolve. If we show weakness, if we show appeasement, then it's an incentive for President Xi and his military to move towards that objective, and we do not want that to happen.
Well, speaking of China preparing for war, that seems to me clear. It's now running an 8-part series on its army. Here is some of it. I'll show you. It's got interviews with a pilot, for instance, who says if he ran out of missiles in an attack on Taiwan, he'd fly his aeroplane into the target kamikaze style. You've got a D-miner who says he'll blow up mines with his own body if he has to clear a minefield for his fellow soldiers. This seems to me very clearly preparing the Chinese population, doesn't it, for a war in the near future?
Oh, that's absolutely right. He's motivating and inspiring the military and also preparing the population for the reality that war could be in the future. I believe we need to take President Xi seriously. And the reality is, yes, does it look like that war would just truly, completely benefit him? Wouldn't it impact his economy as much as the world economy? Of course it would. But he's threatening the use of force. He's got the most rapid growing military in the world, and he has more platforms of every description against submarines, except submarines, than the United States has completely.